your name, beautiful? Say it again. GLA. Yes, nice to meet you. So pretty. Hi.
One of my favorite songs, by the way.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. Liv, what's your name? My pleasure. Derek, you know you can live. Okay, you ready? Am I done? Okay, just let me say hi. Okay, wait. Sunshine! You leaving?
Ain't no sunshine when she's gone. It's not warm when she's away.
Where you been? And I'd be like, where y'all been? Where y'all been?
You went nowhere.
Because I've been working.
Unfinished Business is a compelling and emotionally charged documentary that takes us deep into the heart of R&B sensation Sunshine Anderson's remarkable career. From her early struggles to the peaks of her success, Sunshine Anderson's story is one of unwavering determination. She faced rejection, self-doubt, and the harsh realities of the music industry, yet she never wavered in her pursuit of her passion. As Unfinished Business unfolds, viewers are taken on an intimate and heartfelt journey through Sunshine's trials and tribulations. We witness her moments of vulnerability, her sacrifices, and the relentless drive that fueled her dreams. Now, as she prepares for her biggest show yet in London, Sunshine Anderson is ready to share her story with the world. This is more than just a concert. It's a culmination of her hard work, her resilience, and her triumph over adversity.
Obviously, Sunshine is the pride of me and her daddy's life. I've always said she is the star in my crown. Not just a star into the world, but she's a star in our lives.
Well, Sunshine and I went to junior high school together, Ransom Junior High, the 7th grade, and we actually were in chorus class together.
I came into the music business after being in corporate America for 2 years straight out of college. I approached the music business as an employee. I wasn't an artist. I wasn't equal. In my mind, do what they tell you to do or else they'll drop you.
Sunshine was with us from my Cadillac Raw days.
My love of music definitely comes from my parents, from my family. Both of my parents are singers, not professionally, but my mom was definitely the classical first soprano, in the choir at Winston-Salem State University. My daddy was more of the jazz, doo-wop, on the corner. My daddy is the Al Jarreau. My daddy is that dude. My daddy is that dude. Yeah. So I definitely get it from them. Phyllis Hyman comes to mind. That's where I was first introduced to Tobacco Road and Lou Rawls, and yeah, I know some of y'all in this room a little young to know about Solid Gold, but Solid Gold was a staple in my household on Sundays. Marilyn McCoo had these big pretty boobs, and I wanted boobs like that. And her and Dionne Warwick, I was going to be on Solid Gold. And so that was probably my first influence. I remember a country singer named Crystal Gale. And Crystal Gale had this hair, didn't she, Mark, all the way down to her ankles. This long hair. all the way down to her ankles. And she used to get on there dressed like Little House on the Prairie with a long and swing that hair and sing her country song. And I would stand out on the front porch at the house and put a towel on my head. And I could stand on that step with that brush and that towel, that long towel on my head, and I would just sing. That was my first influence. Of course, Showtime at the Apollo. I was gonna be on Showtime at the Apollo. But by that time, Whitney Houston had probably come in the fray, and I was going to be Whitney Houston. I had a whole collage on my wall. All the other walls had stuff on them too, the Force MDs, and I'll be sure it was on my ceiling. My daddy hated that. But this whole wall right here was just Whitney Houston. I'm talking about, it was like face after face or whatever she was doing, and we had the Right On magazine. So I would cut it all out of the Right On magazine or whatever magazine was Whitney Houston. And I was gonna be Whitney Houston. And then after that, Mary J. Blige pulled up, and I was just like captivated, like, hold up, we had never heard that kind of beat. I was used to Whitney Houston. I grew up in real R&B, rhythm and blues, baby, baby, baby. We really had never heard that kind of beat mixed with R&B songs, You know that you remind me of a love that I once knew. Yes, you do. I sounded like that.
Choir brother of mine, Wallace, I forget his name, he was telling me, he said, I heard this girl singing and I think you should check her out. So I went and checked her out and everything. And I was like, blah, 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 you can't sing. So she started singing and she had this real raspy voice. And I was like, oh, this is very interesting. And it's like, it's crazy because I immediately started thinking like, she got something and it felt warm and endearing. And that's when I think around that time, Layla Hathaway had just came out. I was like, and that's what she sung too. She sung a Layla Hathaway song.
Yeah, he's like, if you're dope, you can sing it again. And I sung it again and he was like, okay. And, I remember the first song we recorded was in Mike's living room. We wasn't even in a booth. And Mike had eggshells all up in the walls. And we had to be real, real, real quiet. You can still hear the birds chirping outside. When the mic was in the middle of the room like this, and I just was singing, whatever he told me, that was my first recording experience.
By the time she came around, she had to about learn how to rap, or she was singing on a bunch of hip hop tracks.
I was probably, had gone on to my second year in college, and I started to go home every weekend and just kick it with Spark and the family and kick it with the boys and record and record.
Sunshine came through with this womanly tone, so it stood out. It reminded most of us of like the older days, like the Gladys Knights and women who could use that lower tone and that register.
Finally, I've graduated. I'm working for the government in DC. I'm working for the government in DC, okay? Okay, I'm a contractor. I just got my foot in the door. This is my first job out of college. Everything is going well. Hi, Sunshine, she doing good down there in DC. My telephone rings, it's Mark Sparks. Now, most of the Spark is not normally the one that calls. You know what I mean? You'll hear from everybody else, but when Spark calls, it's like, okay, well, wait a minute, let me sit up and pay attention. I'm at my desk at work. How you get this number?
When I moved to LA, I met the investors. And then when I met them, that's when I flew everybody to LA.
And I really didn't expect him to say, oh, we got a record deal, you got to come to LA. And I was like, man, go ahead. And he was like, nah, Shine, for real. I was like, man, go ahead, man. I'm good, man. Life is good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I done got, I'm good. You know what I mean? Like, y'all, all them other times, man, y'all be bullshitting. I ain't messing with y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like, how many times you done said we gonna be, how many times? I'm good. He like, nah, Shine, for real. It's for real this time. And it was just different in his voice, and I had a split decision to make. And I got off the phone. And I went home. Ooh, I'm getting goosebumps. I got off the phone and I went home. How was I gonna quit my job? I've been waiting for this job. My mom and daddy done moved me down, helped me get to DC because all my mother's family, my family is in Washington, DC. Washington, DC is my second home, Maryland. My aunties, all my family works in the government. You know, my mama sent me down there. You know, you're gonna be able to get a job. First Union would not hire me permanent. Y'all been First Union would not hire me permanent. My mama sent me to DC. I'm working for the government. How am I gonna quit my job? What am I gonna do? You know, this ain't gonna be good. I can't do this, you know. But I've been waiting for this day. Ooh, I've been waiting for this is the day I've been waiting for all my life. I called my mom at 5. I got off at 5 o'clock. My mom got off at 5:30 or something like that. I called her and left a message when you have all them kind of devices we got. I left a message on the phone at work and said, expect me home in Charlotte tomorrow. I'm coming to drop off my car. I got a record deal. I'm moving to California. And I hung up. Because if I had called her, she was gonna say something. If I called her, she was gonna say, I didn't tell nobody. The whole week, if I called her, she was going to say something that made sense. You can't go down there. You don't know them people. You ain't got no job. How you gonna, you know, she was gonna say something that would have made sense, and I would have stayed in Charlotte, North Carolina, and passed up my dream and my only chance, I felt like. So I left.
I came into the music business after being in corporate America for 2 years straight out of college. I approached the music business as an employee. I wasn't an artist. In my mind, do what they tell you to do or else they'll drop you. And so I was just going through the motion.
When we got to LA and I went into Ocean Studios, I had never been into a studio like that. You know, that place was huge, and we could sit down and eat food and go into the booth, you know, go into the studio there. And I kind of just thought, oh, well, we've never done this before. At least I've never done this before. And you know, we might have been recording some songs, but I didn't really know or think that these songs were going on my album. I mean, I guess I knew what we were out there to do was do music. You know, you hear black folks say that, I do music, we're doing music, but I didn't really know that or didn't understand that this is the beginning of the recording of my album, so to speak. You know, I kind of thought, especially them couple of first songs me and City did, I can't even remember.
For a while, I thought we was gonna do the remix with Foxy Brown at the time. Like Tina Davis that called me, she was at Def Jam. She's like, hey, what about Foxy, the remix? Next thing I know, Wah from the Rough Riders called me. He's like, yo, City, Jada gonna jump on this Heard It All Before remix. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm saying to myself, like, nah, Wah, we about to get Foxy. That's the play with, you know, with the ladies thing and everything. Next thing I know, Jada had went in and put himself on the remix, and it started blasting all across like New York radio.
I Heard It All Before, to be completely honest, was no big thing. I remember us writing this song and me and Mike City sitting down at the board writing this record. And if anything, this was the funnest record that we had, that we were writing.
Everything came together and it touches a nerve.
It was powerful, but it still was like unique. It was cold. Like now that I'm like thinking about it, it's like that was an actually good song for sure. Yeah. And that's why I'm still playing today for sure. Yes.
You had Destiny's Child doing their thing. You had Usher. You had Missy. But it was something about Sunshine Anderson, the lyrics with the track, it was the perfect storm. And that's why it had such an impact.
I remember specifically getting to the part where it says, you must have fell and bumped your head. And I said, you know, we came to the part and there was nothing else to say. You must have fell and bumped your head. And City looked at me and he was like, yeah. And I was like, yeah. You know, we were singing it. You must have fell and bumped your head. You know, like, I remember just feeling excited and being like, damn, this is really me.
I mean, I think it just touched a nerve. I think everything came together and it touches the nerves.
The words, her voice was like magical. But what she was talking about was like, hey, you know what? I heard it all before. You know, you telling these lies. And it's so funny because back in the day we had the Superwoman song, and it just barely touched a man not being good to you. But this one right here broke it all the way down, baby.
You know, heard it all before. When I first heard the record, Mike City, my brother, he's the one that I actually like, look, man, you run with that. Like, you and her is like a special chemistry. You run with that.
Well, her tone says a lot about her. Like, you could take the track away and just have her go a cappella, and just her tone is so magical. Her voice, it cuts through. Like, I love hearing that. So doing that and being that person, I felt like it was a total package, because even her image, it just fit. For some reason, it was the right time for her, because a lot of people would have been like, you're trying to bring that record over here. You know what we playing over here, right? You know what we got over here. But she still managed to break through. And I think a lot of that says about her tone and the way she delivered on the mic.
I think everything came together and it touches a nerve. And obviously it became like a women's anthem, but men like it too.
It said, got me back to get my piece, grab my piece and take it to the streets, grab my pistol. Got me back to, because my daddy used to call it a piece. Got my piece, I got my piece. You know, got me about to grab my piece and take it to the streets, and that's what we recorded. But then the label came back and said, you can't promote gun violence.
That really helped set the foundation.
To remember me, him, and Pinky having so much fun in the studio recording it. I don't really remember feeling like, oh, you know, I didn't get that until the boys. Me and City would be recording, and then the boys would hear it later. You know, we might be at the house, or we might be in the studio, and, you know, and everybody might come. And I remember their reaction.
And they said, you know, she had the #1 song in the country. And, you know, I think it was a surprise for everybody, because, you know, coming from Charlotte, North Carolina, you're not expecting to have the #1 record in the whole country.
I remember recording that record, and I do remember feeling like, you know, time kind of stopped, meaning that everybody was focused on that record, you know, in my camp. Spark brought about 15 of us from North Carolina to Los Angeles. So there was a crew of us. We had writers, we had producers, we had rappers. So there was all these different components, you know what I mean, in the room. And yeah, they liked it, and they said it was the bomb, and this is it, and this is what we rolling with. And that's just kind of all I knew. Went to LA October of 2000. We were behind the record, right? And I learned that terminology. Behind the record, meaning that the song hit the radio in Charlotte, at least, in North Carolina, at least, in Thanksgiving. I just remember everything just going so fast.
You're going out to clubs and you're hearing this all day on the radio. You go to any club, any lounge, you're hearing it 4 or 5 times.
We did the promo tour.
Alicia Keys was opening up for Sunshine. India Ari opened up for Sunshine. When that record came out, it was the biggest record in the world.
From there, the boys moved into the home in the Hills, in the Hollywood Hills. And we would go, that's where everybody was, you know. Again, everybody just kind of doubled up in the rooms in the house. You know, I was the only girl. I was always the only girl, you know. And so I couldn't be in the house with all the guys, you know what I mean? So I was in the hotel, and I remember ultimately having to steal the Geostorm, the blue Geostorm, because niggas would leave me in the studio. I mean, niggas would leave me at the hotel and be gone, you know what I mean? I honestly, now that we're talking, I really was depressed. I had moved to California for my dream, but I was away from all of my friends and all of my family. This was new. I just remember when it was time to work, it was time to go on tour.
I told him, you see how they was singing Lunch or Dinner in the States? You see how they was singing Lunch or Dinner out there? They don't got a appreciation for Lunch or Dinner at home like that. They was singing it word for word. Even the white people.
Sunshine initially at Soul Life was managed by Macy Gray, who became like her mentor, showing her the game. At the same time, she's actually experiencing it. So it's not like there was no time for prep. There was nobody prepped for this. It happened, and it took off like a rocket ship.
Macy Gray sat down next to me at a party one night, She had made friends with Spark and Chris Dolly and some of the people from the label. And she sat down next to me at a party one night and she said, "Are you ready?" And I didn't really kind of, "Yeah, I'm ready, you know, what you mean?" And she was like, "No, are you ready?" And I was like, she was like, "Do you have this in place and do you have that in place? Do you have a management? Do you have an assistant? Do you have an attorney? Do you have an accountant? Are you ready?" And I was like, "No, the boys got me. I'm good, And she was like, "Call me, And so I called her the next day, and Macy Gray took me on tour with her for a week to kind of show me the ropes, I remember standing on the sidelines at a Macy Gray show, and if I'm keeping it real, I never even owned a Macy Gray album, I would remember standing on the sidelines at the concert and them throwing their drawers off in the front, their bras and all that stuff, at Macy, I remember her doing encores, she just kind of told me, this is what you got to do, and this is what you got to have. And then one week the whole week, she took me to 3 managers, 3 accountants, she took me to 3 attorneys. And then when we got back to the house, she said, "You pick," and I picked all the people. But when it got to management, she wasn't none of the 3 managers that she mentioned. And I was like, I don't really know the people, you know what I mean? I know you did this. If it wasn't for you, you know what I mean? I wouldn't even know, that I needed to do all this. I want you to do it, But Macy, I think, was at the start of her 2nd album. And, definitely not in a position to be a manager, as far as going with me, walking me through every step, But she was like, "Let me think about it for a week." She hit me after a week. She was like, "I don't really know, but let's go,
Atlantic Records comes to me and says, "We've merged with Warner Brothers. We've now got all these ladies on the label. We've got Lil' Kim, we've got Trula, we got Brandy, we got Tamia, we got Missy Elliott. And all these other great artists have clauses in their contracts that say you got a year and a half to put us out." So everybody got kind of pushed in front of me, and the label comes and says, "Well, we're basically gonna have to put you on the shelf for like a year and a half. We're still riding off the success from Heard It All Before. It's still playing on radio like crazy, and you to do what? And so I said, "Give me my album back." And they did. They gave me my album back. And we left Atlantic Records and went on a hunt to other record labels to realize that nobody was waving the red flag for Sunshine. One day, I was in Germany flying on a jet, and the next day, I was literally at home, back in my living room. I remember going into Target and Walmart and running into people that I knew from school. And they would say, "Oh, girl." And I would say, "Oh, no, we're just visiting my parents." I laid in the bed and wanted to die. There were times when I generally felt like maybe it would just be better if I just wasn't here. You can't disappear, right? Once you open the damn door, you can't just back out into the hole. You can't just go back to the desk job after the whole world has seen you on the magazine covers and on the television shows and on Soul Train. You can't just go back to the desk job, because then you were gonna show up on that frame on Boss Up. I know you guys remember when the checks stopped coming in. Oh my God, I dreaded. I considered just going to get the job. You never plan for the day it's gonna all be over. You never really think that it's gonna all be over. Months started to go by, and I started to really realize that nobody's calling. The record labels are not calling. No one is coming to save you.
You sacrifice so much, and now you're singing, and sometimes you feel like this ain't gonna work. So what are you gonna do?
And I began to spiral out of control. Drinking, drugging, and fucking, popping pills, smoking weed, drinking heavily at the strip clubs. Anything I can do to hide.
Whenever she was like in a down or dark place, or we just pushing, we had to push, I'd be like, Shine, you can sing your way out of it.
I remember telling my mother one time, you need to call somebody because I need some help. If I don't get some help, I'm gonna hurt myself.
I get strikes. Feel like I just woke up. Them lines on my face. Girl, when I say y'all get behind the scenes.
And Joe Busby called me on the phone and put some good shit in my ear. I listened to him and took his advice and went on to start recording my second album. Gosh, it gets really hazy for me right here because I'm introduced to Matthew Knowles.
And then she became a businesswoman with Matthew Knowles.
Nigga, we finna be rich. Nigga, we finna be rich. It is on. We ain't going to be big as that's Destiny's Child. We ain't going to be big as Beyonce. Nigga, this is what I've been waiting on right here. Sometimes, what's my dad to say? Sometimes you got to lose to win again. Baby, it's on now. Y'all done fucked up the church's money. Off to Houston I go. A lot of people forget that Destiny's Child, the ladies were always signed to what? Columbia, Sony. But I was the flagship artist to come out on Music World Recordings. The first artist on the label. I will always give Matthew Knowles credit for putting the most money in my hand, in my pocket than anybody ever at one time. Matthew wrote me a check for $225,000 for my company, Shining Star Incorporated, and put another $75,000 in my personal pocket. I went to Matthew with 21 songs done. He picked 9 of those songs, and then we went on a journey to record about 4 or 5 more songs to, for the second album to, freshen it up so it wouldn't be so dated. Because I have recorded a lot of these songs previously. We started out on the journey. We got to New York. We went all the way from New York. We went in the studio with Bink. We went in the studio with Dre and Vidal in Philadelphia. We went in the studio, all the way down to Atlanta. And we could never get a hold of Matthew. We could never get a hold of Matthew. We could never get a hold of Matthew.
Okay, just a little bit. Fab said I sound good, bitch. The world is right. Just a little bit.
I met Chris Terry. He played for the Panthers at the time. And we were just close friends, all of us just close friends. Chris was clearly going through something. I was going through something. We needed the nightlife. That's where we thrived at. Everything was upside down. And so in that, you convince yourself that you're in love and that you love this person, and that y'all are supposed to be together, And so you go down a road, that, people always say, oh, you knew what you was getting into. I don't think we always do. We're not paying attention. Even though you see the signs, you don't even know at that time that they're signs. Do you understand? I am guilty of wanting to be loved. I am guilty of needing somebody to tell me it's okay. I am guilty of letting someone tell me you ain't never got to work a day again in your life. And I rolled with it, I was in pain.
I'm pregnant. I don't tell nobody I'm pregnant. Miss Tina had this beautiful dress made for me. I'm on tour with Brian McKnight and Ruben Studdard. I'm out here killing it, okay? But my stomach is growing and that dress is getting tighter and tighter. By the time we got to the Essence Festival, I was 5, almost 6 months pregnant. Definitely no hiding it. And Matthew was gonna be at the Essence Festival. This was gonna be my introduction, him introducing me, flagship artist at Music World.
You know, we did the things. We had her on tour with Brian McKnight. We had her on another tour. Things were going just great until she walked in and said, hey, I'm in love and I'm pregnant and I'm going to Atlanta. It's a football player. And I'm like, wow, what just happened? We had a lot of money invested in Sunshine. I'm talking $700,000-800,000 that we lost on the project.
I was gonna be a wife. So I probably wasn't a whole 6 months pregnant. Had to be right around 4 or 5 months pregnant. Chris proposes. Of course, I'm not gonna be a football baby mom.
Went to Atlanta and didn't want to do a career. Didn't want to do music.
We got married, just 36 people. You know, all my girlfriends were there. My parents, his mother, his son, we all stood there. We got married. I moved to Kansas City because now Chris is playing for Kansas City. My girlfriend was like, you crazy. I left my doctor and I left Atlanta at 7 months pregnant. Cause I'm married now, I left my whole support system. And 2 months later, I still laid on that table and had that baby damn near by myself. If it were not for my best friend, Tammy Faye, calling my mama in the nick of time, I would have laid there and had that baby by myself. The man that I just married, I have not seen for 3 days. And now I am in the hospital on a routine doctor's visit. My blood pressure is so high because I ain't seen him in 3 days that they would not release me. I was so embarrassed to call my mother because my husband is not here and I moved here for this exact reason. When I met him, he was married. I'm not a homewrecker. I'm guilty of loving a man. I never had any run-ins or telephone conversations with this woman. I've never seen this woman face to face to have a conversation with. When I met Chris, he was married and separated. At least that's what he told me. And I believed him. And I ran off into the sunset with him. And eventually, his divorce was final. And then we got married. I believed for so long that it was my punishment to raise my daughter by myself because I had dealt with a married man. At 9 months, I left with my baby in my hand and I never looked back. I would go to cosmetology school during the daytime and I would come to Miss Vivian's after class and watch them babies till 6 in the afternoon, along with my own daughter. So this was my bonding time, you know, along with my own daughter, taking care of these kids. Well, y'all getting in all my business. I'm talking about rock bottom. I'm talking about where my parents had to go and how do you take some equity out of your home? And finally, there was a little boy that I was taking care of and his parents owned a condo and were renting it out. And they let me come and stay. And my parents paid the rent up for like 6 months. And I remember one time I sat in the parking lot at the grocery store and waited on Chris for 2 hours just to come bring me money for Pampers and milk, and he never showed up. It took me 2 whole hours to realize this fool is playing you and he is not coming to bring you Pampers and milk. I love music. I always love music. But music is the one thing that has always had the ability to make me feel less than. I'm always being judged, right? Do you remember how the first week of sales come out and it's, 100,000 sales the first week, you know? I only get paid if you like it. Hell no. I've been blessed to be able to turn this one-hit wonder single into a very blessed career over the last, especially 8 years. Over the last 8 years, I've worked more than I ever have. I've gotten to do, it's like my career is going backwards. It's like all of the stuff that I didn't get to do then
when 9/11 hit, I'm getting to do now. I've opened up for Frankie Beverly and Maze 2 or 3 times. Just got back from London. Like, things are just happening now that never happened. I believed for too long what the world said was that I was a one-hit wonder.
Atlantic dropped the ball with Sunshine. They didn't put the pedal to the metal.
What I love about her is that she's so humble, and her humility is just as great as her talent and her gifts. So when I first started talking to Sunshine and met her, I felt like I've been knowing her for years because that's how she comes across.
Shout out to Corey Taylor from VA, you know, that really pulled my coattail one day when I called him crying at 6 o'clock in the morning without even knowing him. I left a horrible message on his voice machine about how I'm needing management. This man was unbiased. He wasn't gonna win or lose, no way. Let me pull her coattail. Thank God for him. Because once I realized what I looked like to other people, I wanted to change the narrative on my own life. And I want y'all to watch me do it. I started to get my weight up. You know why? Because I met Mike Lighty. I started to get my weight up. When I met Mike, Mike was like, Shine, it's still $1 million out here for you. I was like, okay, let's go. You know, for the last 7 years, I've been grinding with Mike Lighty, if you don't know, which I'm sure you do. Chris Lighty, Mike Lighty's oldest brother. Rest in peace to Chris Lighty. Mike did lie, you know. He came back to me a few years later, was like, you know what, I lied. It's more than $1 million out of me. Like, let's go get it, you know. And I started to turn into a hustler that I never was. I'm grateful for my parents. I just don't know where I would be, you know, without everything that they've instilled in me, without every time they've been there to help me hold my back steady, without all of those conversations, you know, to keep me going. I just don't know where I would be. And so they've given me that time, like I said, to get stable up under my feet. And that started to make me feel strong again. September the 10th, the night before, September the 11th, 2001. I took the last flight out of JFK to LAX. I was in the studio in New York doing the Lunch or Dinner remix with Nas. Don't play with me. I had been there for 3 days with Nas. We landed September the 10th in LA, went to a crazy party with Macy Gray, woke up the next morning, my background singers and people were still in New York, woke up the next morning to telephone calls and people saying, turn on the news. The planes just hit the buildings. September the 10th, I was on a flight with Rob Love, Def Jam. We didn't know each other, but I remember Rob getting on the plane and I knew who he was. He knew who I was. And I remember thinking, man, we made it. Rob Love ended up being a very good friend of mine, and we've kept in touch. And Rob said to me a few years ago, yo, Sunshine, I really like the way you're reinventing yourself. And I was like, reinventing? Really? Is that what I'm doing? Yeah. I didn't know that's what I was doing. You know, you never see yourself how other people see you, you know? You never know how you affect other people. And this great man who's an executive on so many levels is telling me I'm reinventing myself. Oh yeah. You hear different things at certain times in your life, in different places in your life that mean different things and hit you different ways. And I took that and ran. I decided that I didn't want to be that person, that negative, hurting person anymore. I learned that happiness is a choice. You know how many days I lost in them 6 years? Them 6 years went by and I was literally, it's still a cloud. I ain't never been good with days and time. You know what I mean? I'm never gonna lose that time again.
Her learning curve with everything was just a crash course. On the business side, on the creative side, budgeting, who owes what, who's accountable for what money, just everything was a crash course every single time.
So this business is very fickle, and they can celebrate you today on one breath, and the next day out like they never knew you on the next breath. That's just how this business is. And you know, it's very important to know the business.
I built my own motherfucking table. You see where we at? I built my own table. And now what I'm about to do? I'm about to show other women how to build their tables and have a seat.
I think Sunshine has impacted people tremendously. Like that song was so huge; it was absolutely huge. Even still to this day, when I hear it or see the video, it pinned a point in time and in music that was very, very, very necessary.
Sunshine girl, I love you, girl. Keep it going, honey. Keep it going, because everybody is singing your music. Everybody. SWV is singing on tour right now, and I'm singing it all the time. I mean, everywhere I go, I cannot not hear your song, honey.
Don't stop. Get out there and make sure they know your name, girl.
Like if you didn't know her backstory, you wouldn't know that she went through as much as she did. I just kudos to Shine, man. She came through the fire. She walked through the fire.
I mean, this song even set the tempo of like what her product was all about, what she wanted to talk about. And I felt like it was not the word bold, but like, no, let's put everything on the table. We're going to have this conversation. She wasn't afraid to have that conversation, real life thing. So whether it's something that she actually went through or knew someone, like you can tell it was pure when she delivered it. And that's what said a lot about Sunshine Anderson, and not just this record, but just her career.
That song will surpass her, will live forever on.
And T-Live, where are my fellas at? Let me take these shades off so I can see. Fellas, I see one, I see two, I see three. Yes, this next song is for the fellas. Hey, fellas, take your lady to lunch or dinner sometime. I changed the locks on the door. Yeah. And you ain't welcome no more. Y'all know what I say, cuz your eyes ain't working now. Look who's hurting now. I had to shut you down. Pull it up, I had to long time. Sunshine!